Hi, I'm Father Jim Martin. I'm a Jesuit priest and editor-at-large of America magazine, and I also served as a consultant for the new Martin Scorsese film Silence. The movie actually shows apostasy as something that was forced upon the Japanese Christians, as well as the Jesuits who are portrayed, Fathers Rodriguez and Garupe and Ferreira. And apostasy, which is recanting the faith, is something that the Japanese inquisitors tried to get out of the Jesuits and the Japanese Christians. So, yeah, I mean, apostasy is not a good thing, but I think one of the points of the movie is, what is the right thing to do? Because the inquisitors say to the Jesuits, if you don't apostatize, we will harm the Japanese Christians. So in a sense, the apostasy that's done is done out of compassion. And of course, without ruining the movie, there's a very profound scene where the main character realizes that in fact, strange as it is for him to comprehend, that what Christ is asking for him to do is in fact apostatize to save these other people. So it's a very complex portrayal of apostasy. This film presents very profound questions about faith and about life. Really, I think the most difficult question is, what's the right thing to do? Father Rodriguez, who is the main character, finds himself in a situation where the right thing to do seems to go against everything that he has been taught, against what Christian culture would think would be the right thing to do, and what even his fellow Jesuits back home in Portugal would think the right thing to do is. But what happens is he realizes that Jesus is asking him to do this one thing that would seem very confusing to people back home. So it really presents questions about faith, about what God is asking you to do, and I think in particular about doing the right thing even though other people might think that it's totally wrong. So it really, in the end, is about fidelity. Silence is not only a film about faith and about personal choice, but it's also about the history of the Portuguese missionaries in Japan in the 17th century. And so while it's fictionalized, it shows the environment that the Jesuits came into and what they were up against, and also what the Japanese Christians were facing. It shows also missionary work in general. Jesuits have been missionaries all over the world, and it really shows that what they're trying to do is not only preach the gospel, but to love the people. Jesuits were very concerned about enculturation, about learning the language, about really loving the people as they were. And this is a really hard thing to understand for people today, but they were doing something that entailed great risk, for people that they had never met before. I think it also reminds us of the difficulties that missionaries went to. Often today, missionary work, I think, is denigrated and sometimes even attacked. But I always ask people, would you leave everything behind, everything you knew, your family, your friends, your culture, your language, your food, travel halfway across the earth, right, at great risk to yourself, and endanger yourself just to proclaim the gospel to a group of people who back home most people think were not even worthy of evangelization, right? So my sense is that the missionaries were very heroic and were doing this stuff out of love, not as a way to impose something on people, but out of love for these people, out of a desire to share the gospel with them, and did it at great cost to their lives. So for me, the missionaries are still great heroes. One of the great themes of this movie, Silence, is in fact God's silence. That's where the title comes from the Shusaku Endo novel. And the question that the main character asks himself is, why is God so silent? He doesn't feel God in his prayer. He wonders why God is seemingly allowing people to suffer, the Japanese Christians and even his brother Jesuits. But at the end of the movie, without ruining the ending, he comes to realize that God was in the silence. And I think what that is meant to convey is that God was in the everyday, not simply in his interior life, but in what he was seeing around him, and the love of the people and the faith of the people. There is a very profound scene in the movie where the silence, his interior silence, is finally broken, but he realizes that God is not only in our interior lives, but in our exterior lives as well, and so that's a great revelation for him. I was only one of many Jesuit consultants on this film. They spoke to, for example, Father Anthony Userler on the west coast of the United States, Father Dave Collins, who's a Jesuit historian at Georgetown. And in Taiwan, I put them in touch with Father Jerry Martinson, who really helped them over there while they were filming in Taiwan. My role was to help Martin Scorsese and his co-screenwriter, Jay Cox, with the original script. And I tried to make it more Jesuit. I corrected some things that didn't seem very Jesuit. And basically what they wanted to know is, what would a Jesuit think in this situation? What would a Jesuit do in this situation? What would a Jesuit say in this situation? And even, what would a Jesuit pray in this situation? So for example, there's a lot of references to the exercises, and I think the script is very, very Jesuit. I also worked with the actors, with Andrew Garfield, Adam Driver, and Liam Neeson, to help them understand their roles as Jesuits, and especially with Andrew Garfield, whom I directed through the spiritual exercises, the so-called 19th annotation, or the exercises in daily life. And we went through the whole exercises, start to finish, over several months for him to come to understand his role, but also it was something that was very personal to him. As most people know, once you enter the exercises, it ceased to be about the project that he was doing and really about him and God, without breaking any confidences. At one point, for his third week, the third part of the exercises, he and Adam were in Portugal, and so I arranged to have them go to St. Bino's, a retreat house in Wales. And there, Andrew did his third week, the Passion of the Christ, and then we Skyped every night. Most of the time we met in private in my office right here, but during that week when he was in Wales, we Skyped. And Adam himself also made an 8-day retreat at St. Bino's. Liam had already known a lot about the Jesuits from his work with the Mission in 1980. So by the end, the screenwriters, the director, and all the actors knew a lot about the Jesuits. Funny enough, at the end of my retreat with Andrew, Martin Scorsese said to me, "I'm sorry you won't be in Taiwan because we won't have an expert in Jesuit spirituality." And I said, "You will have an expert in Jesuit spirituality, Andrew Garfield, because he just finished the spiritual exercises."